it should be important to us, the effect that we're having by our writing. And, you know, personally, the reason that I write, what keeps me going is getting comments back from readers. You know, I got an email the other day saying, you know, I feel smarter after reading your site. And that's the kind of thing, you know, I've got 2 young kids. It's hard for me, you know, I've been blogging for about 4 years, and I have something up on my site 29 days a month, let's say. So it's not easy to do that, and it takes a certain sort of psychic feedback to keep yourself going. And for me, ego is not a psychic feedback to keep me doing this work. I need to feel like I'm having some influence, changing some people's ideas. But there's not enough of us out there doing that. And this guy is right, that Republicans tend to be okay at getting stuff in the news, but not good at affecting the politicians. So, a little more of this article. The majority of the left-wing blogospheres, I mentioned this before, identifies with the Democratic Party, while fully half of the right-wing blogosphere does not identify with the Republican Party. Further, many of the right-wing blogs that drive right-wing blogosphere discussions as a result of their low stickiness, he has some grammar errors in here, but including Instapundit, Sullivan, LGF, which is Little Green Football, is a great site if you're interested in terrorism and Islamic issues, do not self-identify as Republican. This may seem like a small point because these blogs are clearly conservative, but their general lack of interest in shaping Republican politics outside of mainstream media channels not only leaves them utterly impotent when it comes to non-MSM influence, but since they drive discussions on most of the other right-wing blogs, it leaves the right-wing blogosphere in general impotent to influence Republican politics. Again, very important. And this is a few years old, but it still applies. It's ironic that at the moment when the right-wing blogosphere is being lauded for its influence, it's becoming increasingly clear that it has structural institutional weaknesses that will ever prevent it from becoming more influential than it was during the Dan Rather story, while he says at the same time their being so partisan makes them strong. As long as we think of the Democratic Party and the lefty blogosphere in terms of we will remain strong. Wingers, by which he means right-wingers, like to think of themselves as independent, no matter how conservative they are, but that independence makes them weak. So I think these are very important issues from the intellectual opposition, telling us it's sort of the beginning of a roadmap to what we need to do to be successful. And by successful, I mean, to me, success is defined as getting people to vote for politicians who support our ideas and making sure that those politicians continue to vote that way once they're in office and believe that they'll lose office if they don't. You know, the last election was the first time we've really seen Republicans get punished for not behaving like Republicans, but it really didn't have anything to do with the blogosphere. It was so big that Republicans anywhere couldn't help noticing, whereas the Democratic blogosphere is so active that they can influence their politicians even on smaller issues. Now, this is from another website talking about a conference just from a few months ago. Eric Erickson, the editor of Red State, talked about why progressives have an advantage over conservatives, and he offered 3 means of reversing the trend. First, he said, conservatives must place less emphasis on punditry. Quote, everyone wants to be the next online Rush Limbaugh. And begin to emulate, so people have to stop trying to do that and begin to emulate the left's use of the internet to facilitate organization and activism. I think that's exactly right. Second, they need to focus to a greater level on local and state politics, and Erickson believes in particular the 2010 race, which he thinks, for his own reasons, may be more important than the current race. And finally, he says, must transcend old tech and use the internet for a technical advantage, the way the Republican Party currently has in direct mail, for example, collecting email addresses. Now, one thing that occurs, go back to this first slide here. Emulate the left's use of the internet to facilitate organization and activism. This is something that conservatives haven't been good at. And speaking as someone who's more libertarian, I sort of understand the mental block towards doing this because it's not in our nature to go around telling everybody what to do. We we want to be left alone as conservatives. We generally want to be left alone. And that means it's not in our DNA to think that we should then go bother other people about what to do. But the bottom line is if we don't go do something to try to tell other people what to do, they're going to keep doing what they've been doing, which is really very bad for us. It's very bad for liberty. And we need to organize in a way that we can start getting the message out more. A couple very quick things I want to show you, and then my time here will be done. This is just a screenshot from this morning on Daily Post, but if you look, you see the two ads just to the right of center. And this is really fascinating, actually. These are two competing ads by two different unions. The top one says, SEIU's deals hurt my patients. And it's an ad by the California Nurses Association encouraging people to join that union instead of the SEIU. The second ad is an ad from the SEIU saying, shame on the California Nurses Association. Now, you know how much money unions have to spend on political stuff, so I'm just going to give you a couple things here. Estimated, so I was looking at a site called Blog Ads, which you might check out sometime, where you can buy ads on internet sites. These Daily Post ads that they're running right now, based on my math, looks like they're making about $45,000 a week. Other sites, Talking Points Memo, $19,000 a week. Democratic Underground, $6,000. MyDD, $9,000. Get down to Drudge Report, which is the most trafficked conservative leading site, even though it's more sort of newsy. You're probably at $1,000 or two, maybe. These guys are making the big money, and it lets them build bigger and bigger. The last thing I'd say, I've got more, but I think I'm out of time, is that I think we need to organize much better, not only in general, but specifically about blogging. It's great that we have so many interested new bloggers in this room. What I would suggest is that for those of you who may feel like you don't have time to blog every day, or even every other day, if you don't blog very frequently, you're not going to get traffic. People will come, they'll come back to your site, they'll say there's nothing new, and they won't come back anymore. I would suggest you try to organize into a group of 2 or 3 people who can get together and fill the blog with new material on a regular basis. Somehow I managed to do it. I don't know how. I type very fast. But if you want to blog but you think you can only get 1 or 2 things up in a week, try to get together with a couple other people and create a blog where you can, as a group, have fresh content up there all the time. And I think there was one last thing I really wanted to show you that I thought was important. This is from another article I found online, sort of liberal rules of the road for developing the liberal blogosphere. And I think these are very important and we need to pay attention to them. I'm going to go read it very fast and then I'll be done. First, create the institutions that can do the research and analysis that can underpin their causes. Okay, that part's a little bit out of our control. But the people who are writing this article, they have the money to do that. Meet on a regular basis. Okay, I don't know if that's really important. Now, these next ones, though, are big. Support each other, celebrate success of others. We need to cross-market. The Democrats do that, the liberals do that pretty well. Don't criticize each other. I'm perfectly happy to criticize other people, even sort of on my side. They basically don't. And I think there's probably a middle ground in there where you can criticize someone who's generally on your side, but maybe in a way where you don't call them the kind of names that we're used to seeing the liberals call each other. Stay on message, that's really important, and reward those politicians who act progressively as opposed to those who only talk progressively. What we need to do to make conservative blogging a success, is to make politicians afraid of being targeted by conservative blogs. They are not yet afraid of us. Until they are, we're not going to be very effective. And I probably presented you with more questions than answers, but it's stuff I think we should all be thinking about. Anyone who wants to reach me, rossbutin@rossbutin.com, and I'd be happy to talk with any of you at any time. Thanks.